The right to vote is the key to our democracy. It's how we ensure our government works for us, all of us. Over the course of more than 2 centuries, we expanded the franchise. But in recent years, voting rights have been under attack. And with Donald Trump's nomination of Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court, things could get much worse. States originally limited voting to white men who owned property, just 6% of the population. Over time, with people putting their bodies in the streets and their lives on the line, we opened up the democratic process. After the Civil War, the 15th Amendment made it unlawful to deny the vote based on race. The women's suffrage movement led to the 19th Amendment. That guaranteed women the right to vote. During the Civil Rights Movement, Black Americans and their allies faced down police dogs and water hoses for the right to vote. Their effort resulted in the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It outlawed racist practices like so-called literacy tests, and it stopped states from passing new discriminatory restrictions. In 1993, Congress enacted the National Voter Registration Act to make voter registration more accessible. In 2008, this progress culminated in the election of the nation's first black president. Then came the backlash. After the Tea Party wave in 2010, states started making it much harder to vote, with restrictive photo ID laws, cuts to early voting, mass purges of eligible voters from the rolls. These restrictions hit voters of color and working class people hardest. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court issued decision after decision undermining federal protections for the right to vote. In 2013, the Roberts Court gutted the Voting Rights Act on a 5-4 vote. States with a history of discrimination no longer needed federal approval to change their election laws. This year, the court upheld voter purges in Ohio and racial gerrymandering in Texas. Again, 5-4. Trump's new nominee could make things even worse on the Supreme Court. As a circuit court judge, Kavanaugh upheld a voter ID law in South Carolina. The bottom line is, we should be making voting free, fair, and accessible to all Americans. And we need a Supreme Court that protects our rights. If we want a democracy that represents all of us, one where everyone has an equal voice, we are going to have to fight for it. We've overcome attacks on our rights before. We can do it again.